If you look at an artist and how long that artist takes to drop an album, do you think it's merited to wait 5+ years to drop an album, and that let's say said album should still be relevant, let's say in a fan's eyes and like point of view? How do you feel about that whole conversation?
I mean, it depends the artist. Some artists can go 5 years without dropping an album. Others can only stay relevant after dropping every year consistently. So, I mean, I think it depends the artist. But in today's episode, guys, we'll be taking you through 5 albums the entire music world is waiting on to drop. And a lot of these could be dropping in 2022. And we hope that they will drop this year. And let us know in the comments which album you're waiting on the most. And for this list, it's going to be interesting because we'll take you through 5 different albums and tell you why there's such a big demand for these albums. And then get into when we think they're going to be dropping. So, to start off the list, I think it's the one name that everybody has in mind right now. It's Kendrick Lamar. And it's been 1,804 days since the last time Kendrick dropped an album, and that was Damn in 2017. And since then, there's been so much that's happened in hip-hop. If you look at the come-ups of Pop Smoke, Roddy Ricch, Polo G, Lil Baby, there's been a whole new generation of rappers since Kendrick last dropped. So it really feels like he's been away for a minute. But what do you think is the reason for people wanting this new album so bad?
I think it's the way that Kendrick Lamar connects to his fan base. And hear me out. And we were having this conversation with someone the other day, how like everyone's sort of on like a low frequency right now. Like it's, COVID is just kind of, getting past us right now, and we're kind of going into a new mode. And I think that what Kendrick Lamar's music does for the music industry is it gives people a sense of hope. It allows people to be able to expand their mind and to be able to go into different places. At least that's the way I feel about it. And I think that that's what people want right now out of music. Like a lot of music sounds uninspired. A lot of music feels as if it's unfinished. A lot of music feels as if it's being rushed out for sales. And I think that with fans, we have to expect the opposite with Kendrick Lamar. So, do you remember an album being like this hype, let's say, within the hip-hop industry just as a whole? Do you remember something be this hype?
Not really. I mean, the last one I could think of was maybe Detox back in the day, but like...
The Carter 5, maybe?
Carter 5 had a lot of hype, but I feel like this is really the most hyped-up album just because he's coming off of... Good Kid, Mad City, and To Pimp a Butterfly, 2 undeniable masterpieces, and Damn could maybe be slaughtered in that conversation too. And Kendrick just drops like this riveting perspective on the world, and I think that's what people are kind of waiting on, because when it comes to tackling world events and just giving his perspective on it, it's often really, really mind-altering to see where he's at. And I feel like people just want to know where Kendrick's attention is going to be at for this album. And what's interesting too is that Kendrick's at this transitional period in his career, because this is going to be his last album with TDE, and after this he's going to be transitioning into a new wave of his career, which is going to be the PG Lang record label that he's going to be releasing music through, which is his own. So it's going to be cool to see how he sums up this chapter in his career. And what's pretty cool too is that a lot of people consider Kendrick to be the best rapper alive, and we know how engrossing his albums are. We know the impact they have on the culture. People are going to start fucking pushing the release dates back. People are going to maybe take a step back and let Kendrick do his thing, because you don't want to fuck with a Goliath like Kendrick when he's in album mode. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does. But when do you think this is dropping? Because a lot of people thought it was going to come in 2021 when he dropped the Family Ties verse and said, 2021, I ain't taking no prisoners. But it seems like the only thing that he had locked up was the album, and it's still not here, sadly. So with all these festivals lined up and his Super Bowl performance having just happened, do you see it coming in 2022?
Yeah, he's doing a European festival. He's doing Rolling Loud, and then I believe he's also doing Milan as well. What was the European festival? What's the one in England?
Glastonbury,
yeah, he's headlining there. So what's crazy about those tour dates is that, well, not tour dates, because it's not like an official tour for an album. It's just like those festival dates are all within a month from each other. So it's like, I could kind of see it happening where he drops this before the summer, and then after that takes this music to the world. And I think that that's what the world needs right now. Someone needs to be able to see Kendrick Lamar live, because take it back to 2017, all right? We were I was 17 when that album dropped. Think about, a lot of maybe, viewers on this channel that haven't experienced the Kendrick rollout and that haven't gone through that sort of emotion.
We were in high school, man.
We were in high school when that happened. Now, like, we have the podcast full blown. So, I mean, it's going to be an exciting moment for the whole industry, because even besides rap, just Kendrick Lamar's music is so valuable to everyone, and you could see how many people have talked about it on, in public, and just said like this is a guy that needs to be able to drop because we need to feel inspired. And I think LeBron actually tweeted that, like, we need Kendrick's music like now more than ever to be able to bring those frequencies back up. So that was the first one. Let's go on to the second one. Let's go on to Frank Ocean's new album. And by the way, guys, we actually did a topic on this, an episode, Where is Frank Ocean? And we had spoken about all the details that went into this and, what's led up to this. And there hasn't been major word on this album besides, I believe, him shopping around the album back in September of 2021. I believe it was for distribution purposes. And I think that now, after what had happened, especially like, with those freestyles that he had done where he was doing the live instrumentals and he was, that he was paying homage to his brother, of course. I don't know. We haven't heard much about this. So where do you think this album is? And as a Frank Ocean fan, why do you need it in particular?
I just think that like Frank Ocean pours so much emotion into his music, and a lot of people have used his music, during certain periods and points in their lives, and it's kind of become the soundtrack to a lot of people's lives. It kind of feels like Frank Ocean is in the room with you when you're listening to him.
A healing process.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is that I feel like fans aren't necessarily in a rush to get this Frank Ocean album. Like, Blonde is still aging gracefully, and I feel like there's so much to revisit within that project.
It feels like it dropped yesterday.
It does, but what's interesting is that I think that the fans just want to hear from an old friend again. Like, it feels like, getting a new Frank Ocean album would be like seeing a good old friend, that you knew back in high school where they were a part of your life and you have fond memories with them. I just feel like people want to know how Frank Ocean's been doing, where he's at, and what's driving him artistically right now. And especially after he appeared this past Christmas on the Blonded Radio and did, this song that had this piano instrumental, and he was getting into, the situation that happened with his brother who had passed away. I think fans are also asking that question: is Frank Ocean going to use music and his art form to actually cope with the loss of his brother, and actually maybe have that music be healing for other people that are going through loss? So it's going to be interesting to see where he's at, but I feel like that demand is there just because when Frank Ocean drops an album, he kind of shifts the landscape of R&B and
it's
offers
always
you
immaculate too.
Something alternative. So I mean, why do you think fans need it so much?
Oh, I think, as I said before, it's a healing process with Frank Ocean. I mean, you could put on Channel Orange, you could put on Blonde, and man, you'll be lost for days. Like, it doesn't end. And I think that what Frank Ocean does so well is that he captures emotion better than any other artist in the industry right now. And I think that Frank Ocean and Kendrick are kind of on a similar wavelength with their music, and they kind of treat it in a similar, let's say, fashion where they're very particular with what they put out, and they never really release in too much abundance. And I think that's really respectable from Frank Ocean because he knows how important his music means to a fan of his. That's something that I feel as if a lot of artists don't really understand when they're releasing and pumping so much music, because your fans will get desensitized to the material that you're eventually releasing. So taking this time period where I believe it's 2,041 days since he's dropped, that's great, because at the end of the day, he needs time to live. He needs time to be able to gain experience and to craft this project. I mean, it's all a part of the creativity process. And that's what I've always loved about Frank Ocean. Like, not only does he immerse you into a beautiful soundscape, but it almost feels as if he's talking to you. So that was Frank Ocean's new album. Let me know, by the way, guys, what's your favorite Frank Ocean song in the comments? That's going to be interesting. But
also,
go for it.
I just to say for Frank, I don't know when it's going to drop. Hopefully 2022, guys. But like Ant said earlier, he's been shopping around the album. There's been talks, but no confirmation.
There's nothing really going on right now for a release date. So that's why, there's not much speculation to do. But let's go into Rihanna's new album, because we're a hip hop, channel, but fuck, dude, it's Rihanna. Who doesn't listen to her music? Who hasn't consumed some of her biggest hits ever? And I mean, the last time she dropped, I believe, was Anti back in 2016. And what was beautiful about this album is that it was one of her best performances ever on an album. It really felt as if she was hitting the peak of her artistry, and that, now it didn't have to be like, let's say, radio hits that were going to be able to get her numbers, and that she was, experimenting with a different array of sounds, and she had some beautiful vocal performances that we didn't see from her in a minute. So why do you think she's taken this long? And I think my guess on it is probably because she's so immersed into her business and that she's probably on that side of things now. But listen, she's teased the record. She said it's coming out. I mean, I'm a hip hop fan and I'm still waiting for it. But what about you, man? Like, take me through your Rihanna experience, because I believe this is actually the first time we're talking about her music on the podcast.
It is the first time, and it's been 2,246 days since Rihanna last dropped her album Anti. And Listen, if you're asking me, Rihanna makes some of the best radio music in the world. I mean, when you think about the kinds of artists that are, frequently popping up on the radio, I haven't heard an artist to drop that quality of music on the radio on that frequent of a basis. Like songs like Wild Thoughts or Bitch Better Have My Money, Diamonds. Like, I can hear those songs today and they won't sound overplayed to me. I'll still get enjoyment out of hearing them. And I just think there's a demand for this album because of how powerful Rihanna's music is and how easy it is for so many people to gravitate towards. I mean, if you look at choruses on her last album, Anti, like Work, or on, Kiss It Better Baby, it's as if she fucking laces these choruses with crack cocaine because they're so addictive and they just play over and over in your head. And I think that's what Rihanna really does well, is creating these songs that so many people can latch onto. And with Anti, this was her artistic peak, if you really think about it, because she was mixing old sounds with new sounds to kind of give you this timeless feeling to the music. And the whole album was like anti-establishment. It was anti-typical from the pop music that was coming out around that time. And it was anti-Rihanna. She was kind of giving you a new side of herself and tapping into Caribbean music and so many other styles. So it was cool to get that from her and from an artist like Rihanna. Because if you really think about it, when you look at Rihanna, you have to put her in the same conversation as the Michael Jacksons, the Madonnas, the Elton Johns. See, she's the 7th highest selling artist of all time. She sold over 250 million records worldwide. So when Rihanna is to come out with an album, the whole fucking world is watching. And
Absolutely.
I think that's why it's going to be a huge moment.
Well, listen, we're hip hop fans, and like my mom will probably listen to that album.
Yeah.
My sisters will, my dad probably will. The people sitting in this studio right now probably will. That's how I feel as if impactful Rihanna is, especially like. Even if you want to try and dodge her music, fuck you. Like you're not dodging
Yeah.
her music. You're listening to it one way or the other, either through a friend or on the radio. But even going back to Auntie, I mean, listen, Love on the Brain, Higher, those are some of her best vocal performances within her catalog. And I just want to see what she's working on, to be honest with you. Like, that's what I want to see is like, is she going to go into a completely different direction? Is she going to build off of, what she laid down on Auntie? What is she going to do different than what she did back in 2016? And that's what's interesting for me here, like fuck a release date, because I don't even think we have one, solidified right now. I listen, I don't have any guesses for it. The only thing I do want to see is like, I want to see an evolution. I want to see what's been happening for the past 5 years, because think about it, for a lot of people on this list, okay, it's been fucking 5 years. That's half a decade of growth. That's a lot of time to be able to craft a beautiful project. And that's what I think is so interesting about everyone on this list, not only Rihanna, is that you're going to see some passionate projects being released.
Been half a decade.
So, okay. Do you like that though? Like, have you?
Of course,
have you
like
enjoyed
that.
this whole process?
I've definitely enjoyed it. I just feel like it's time for a lot of these artists. It's time to make their return. And speaking on Rihanna, there has been some updates in December of 2021. A paparazzo asked her, when is your new music coming out? She said soon, which that means fucking nothing. But I mean, in September of 2021, she said that she was experimenting on her new album, said that it might be reggae inspired back in 2019.
I would love that.
But I mean, that was 2019. That's been 3 years since she said that. But the situation now is that, Rihanna's pregnant. So
congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations to Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. But that just tells me that she'll be out of commission probably for some time. I don't see her going on a tour anytime soon or really being able to pull off a complete album rollout.
Yeah, that must be very
if she
hard.
wants something grand. So I don't think we're getting this for another 2 years, if I'm being real with you guys.
Listen, I'd accept it, though.
I'd be fine with that, for sure.
Any artist on this list could take as long as they want, I think I have the bias, like, sort of emotion towards Kendrick on here because, like, he's my favorite artist, and I obviously want to hear from him, but for the most part, like, these types of artists need time to be able to craft their music. And let me know how you guys feel about this whole conversation in the comment section. Are you guys willing to wait 5 years for an album? And if you're not, when is your cutoff? But all right, let's get back into the list. Let's go into Beyonce's new album, because Lemonade was a smash hit with the fans, especially.
Game-changing.
Everyone fucked with this album. And I remember when it dropped, man, like, there was so much noise around it because of all the different types of subject matter that was being touched upon. I mean, Jay-Z had to make another album because of it. So there's so many different things that go into Lemonade. And I remember when this dropped in high school, everyone was talking about it too, because whenever Beyonce drops, it's a statement, you know? It's sort of this thing where it's more than a music statement, it becomes a social statement. Everyone has to be able to sit down and watch this movie that Beyonce's, putting together through her albums. And that's what I love about her, is that she's so cinematic in her approach and the way that she creates her music. She's been in this game for years now, and she understands how to craft beautiful albums.
Since she was like 9 years old, man.
Dude, that's what's crazy.
Child, yeah.
And I love some of her interviews because her whole thing from the jump has been, create albums, create legacy pieces, and I love that approach from her because you hear it in the record. So, take me to this. What are you waiting for from Beyonce, and what do you want to see out of this next album?
Yeah, well, it's interesting with Beyonce because, again, it's been 2,160 days since she dropped Lemonade, and what's interesting is that Beyonce adds way more value to an album than just a collection of songs. I mean, it's one thing to communicate your vision for a project through music, but when you add a cinematic component to that, that's a totally different thing. And
Facts.
It's been beautiful to see her add visual albums to Lemonade and her self-titled album Beyonce, which came out in 2013. And now we're starting to see a resurgence of visual albums. We saw Frank Ocean attempt it with Endless later on in 2016 as well. We're seeing that Kid Cudi is adding a TV show to his Intergalactic album. So I just love the fact that Beyonce is revolutionizing the album itself in 2022 and adding way more value to it. So that's kind of what I'm expecting from Beyonce. And I think that's why there's such a demand, is that she's not just dropping an album on Spotify. She's making deals with HBO to have a 1 hour long film to accompany that piece. Like, when I think of a true album experience, I don't think anybody right now is doing it better than Beyonce. And what's cool too is that she also revolutionized how to put out your album. If you look at Beyonce, which came out back in 2013, that was a surprise album. And during that time, an artist of her magnitude was not releasing surprise albums with no prior promotion. So it was cool to see how many artists she's influenced from a variety of genres. And like you said, the social impact, the musical impact is just undeniable whenever Beyonce drops an album. And it was just so cool to see what she did with Lemonade.
It's needed right now too, because even at that, like, this, I believe, goes also for Rihanna, is we need better pop music right now. I'm listening to a lot of pop music that's being released, and it sounds very flat. It feels very uninspired. There's not much going into the production anymore, especially the vocal performances too. Like, I think the only, let's say, other artist that's really doing pop well right now in that lane is Doja Cat. Doja Cat's putting out some great fucking pop records. And when you're going to have Rihanna dropping and Beyonce dropping, imagine in the same year, you better believe, that top 10 of the Hot 100 is going to look beautiful. So
yeah,
that's
competitive,
Beyonce.
to say the least.
Going to be very competitive. But let's go on to SZA's new album, and this is going to be our final album that we're going to talk about
Actually,
today.
before we get to it, we did forget one thing about Beyonce.
What
it's
did we forget?
the news as to when she could be dropping.
Okay, go for it.
So there was a rumor that the Sony CEO hinted that she would be dropping sometime in 2022. And in August of 2021, Beyonce said this: "With all the isolation and injustice over the past year, I think we are all ready to escape, travel, love, and laugh again. I feel a renaissance emerging, and I would like to be part of that nurturing escape in any possible way. I've been in the studio for a year and a half." So that was this past summer. That's looking really good. And with any Beyonce album, we know that it's probably going to come without warning, drop in the middle of the night. So we'll have to see, guys. But there is a strong chance that Beyonce returns in 2022. But let's go on to our next pick.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. I never knew that, by the way. That's pretty fire.
It's pretty cool.
And when did you say that? Last summer?
Last summer.
What day are we today? Today we're the... Oh, shit. Okay. All right. So listen, maybe something
Let's
ends
see.
up happening before the year ends up dropping, but let's go to the last album. Let's go on to SZA's new album. And actually, talking about SZA, I think one of the coolest things about her career is that she dropped her debut and then went silent for 5 years. Like, I find that cool, but also kind of unjust to her, because maybe she wanted to put out some records and they didn't get the clearances from the label, or maybe she, had problems making her music and, maybe, wanted to release certain things that the label weren't okay with. But how do you feel about Control? Because this was an album that was universally praised by fans and critics alike. You have songs on there that, hit the top 10 on the Hot 100. She's doing features right now that are going absolutely viral. So, her voice is still fresh and people are hungry for her. So Where do you think the demand with SZA's new album lies, and when do you think we'll possibly be getting this new album?
There's a huge demand for this new SZA album, and Control came out 1,748 days ago, so we're kind of, edging around that 5-year period for SZA too. And when we think about like the most impactful R&B artists of this past decade, you think of names like Frank Ocean, you think of The Weeknd, you think of Summer Walker, Brent Faiyaz, and you think of SZA. And what's interesting about the whole demand for this new SZA album is that I feel like a big part of her fan base comes from a lot of hip hop fans, because if you think about it, in terms of her collaborators, I know myself included, I was introduced to her music because she was signed to TDE, being the first singer and female artist signed to the label, and because she was working with so many hip hop artists. I mean, her most frequent collaborators are Isaiah Rashad, Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, these hip hop names that we associate to. But I think what SZA does so well is that she gives you this alternative R&B that's so moody, so atmospheric, and you can't really put into a box. It's kind of genre-less.
Yeah,
the music feels limitless.
Not only that,
I mean?
but I'm a big fan of her writing. Like, I was going through Control the other day, funny enough, and I was listening to her writing, and it's so emotion provoking. Like, I feel as if it's also super romantic, and it does well with any type of audience. I mean, like, you could be a full blown hip hop fan and like Wu-Tang Clan fan, and like
fuck with SZA.
Fuck with SZA. Like, I have no problem doing that, and I also love the way that she paints her picture so beautifully within an album, and there's this cohesive sonic direction, and that's what makes me wonder now, because we know what happened with TDE and her. Like, apparently, like, she wanted to release a fuckload of music and they weren't down to release it.
What's interesting though is that apparently Punch had to release Control and like take the hard drive away from her because she was a perfectionist and she wanted to keep reworking the album. But now it's, at least in 2020, it seemed like TDE was maybe preventing her from dropping it. So what do you think the situation is with that? And do you think that's just the TDE blueprint where, let's drop an album every 5 years?
Well, it's quality control,
Yeah.
and you don't want it to ever become a bad record. Like, imagine she drops an album after Control, and like, just the quality is not up to par with it. And I think that that's a great reason to be able to shelf an album to a certain extent, right? Because creativity comes first, and obviously an artist wants their music to be heard, and that's completely understandable. Just in this case, maybe there is good reason, because I don't have access to those files. I don't know what that, those maybe 2-3 albums that she made are sounding like right now. Like, who knows what's going on? But what's cool about SZA is that the demand is still there. It's not a case where they're shelving it and like her stock is going down. No. Her new song with Doja Cat right now is doing fucking numbers, and that just goes to prove how valuable a vocalist like SZA is to a track. Imagine when she drops, she goes on those runs and she starts taking over, she starts touring, she goes full force. You could possibly see a much bigger reception than Control on this next album.
2 times platinum, by the way, that album.
Dude, that's fucking ridiculous for a debut album. Like, there's not a lot of people within that lane that are able to do that and achieve that. And that's what I love about SZA, is that she's breaking the boundaries of, R&B. Another thing, too, this is what's interesting. When I listened to Control back in 2017, the sound was super refreshing and super new, especially the way that she was approaching her melodies, the way that she was singing. And then I heard a bunch of other people go into that direction with their music, like paying attention to those melodies and like going to, for that sort of cadence and style that SZA has. So I also think she's influential in a way. I also think that she's valuable to her fan base because the types of emotions that she's evoking in her album are super raw and genuine.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for me.
Everything that she's been dropping since Control in terms of singles have all been hitting. If you look at Good Days, if you look at I Hate You, both cracked the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. Then Kiss Me More with Doja Cat, broke records. So it's pretty cool to see what she's been doing. And she even has a song called Shirt, which is unreleased, but went viral on TikTok as a sound. So there's definitely a huge demand for the new album. And in terms of when we could be getting it, it's interesting because, the whole sophomore slump thing is a question. Maybe she's been fearful of not wanting to make an album that goes into that category, but I don't see how there's any way that she could, because she's dropped nothing but quality over the years. And there was a rumor in September of 2021 that she was apparently debating scrapping her album and starting from scratch. So that wasn't the best of news. But apart from that, there's been times where she said, I'll be dropping in 2021. Obviously, that didn't happen. So I think we'll have to wait it out. I know that TDE has been quiet besides the Isaiah Rashad release last year. So I think they're going to be wanting to put out albums in 2022, 2023, now that touring is more of a possibility. But we'll have to wait and see, man. I really don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, and I think there's this question mark with all of these albums that we ended up, listing off today. And guys, let us know which ones we missed because we wanted to take a different approach with this list. We'll probably end up making one for rap and hip hop strictly at a certain point, but these are ones that are really universally waited on at the moment. So guys, let me know in the comment section, what is the album you guys are waiting for the most? And not only that, thank you guys so much for coming through today because it's always a pleasure doing content for you. Hit the subscribe button if you have not already because we will be keeping you updated with the biggest releases of the year as far as review goes or whatever updates end up coming out. So stay tuned with us. Thank you so much for watching this and we'll catch you in the next one.